Everyone has intuition, but most of us are moving so fast. We have a glimmer, we have something comes up, and we just keep moving. And the trick is to go, oh, there it is. Oh, wow. And to sit and focus on it and then go, oh, got it. Thank you, Spirit.
Human Design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, your Human Design guide.
And I'm Haley, on this journey with you to uncover the power of human design.
Together, we're here to explore how embracing your authentic self is the ultimate path to a life of more freedom and fulfillment.
Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Human Design Hive podcast. I am your host, Dana Phillips, and I am starting this episode alone today because today we have another very special guest that I'm really excited to introduce you to. So, I had the pleasure recently of connecting with Kristina Rogers, and Kristina is a healer, a teacher, an intuitive, and she really helps guide people along their spiritual path, and she helps them with their healing, their energy management, and getting in touch with their inner guidance. She is someone that does readings with people to help navigate their life path, connect with their spirit guides, other people who have passed over. And she also does some little energetic home clearing. So I thought it would be really great to bring Kristina onto the podcast because what she really excels at, I believe, I mean, she has lots of talents, as you'll hear in this episode. But what I was really interested to hear about was how she really works with her clients and her students to help them deepen their natural intuition. Because as we speak about a lot here on the podcast, we are all very intuitive beings. And mainly what's getting in our way there of believing that we're intuitive is we've just lost touch with how it expresses in each of us because the world we live in is a very logic and reason centered business, but that is shifting as we keep moving forward in time to getting us back into a more intentional and intuition body based awareness to help us move forward and create the kind of life that we want. And Kristina is really gifted at helping people, like I said, deepen their own intuition, but then also if there is any kind of energetic blocks or anything that's getting in their way of helping them step into that fully intuitive side of themselves, she can help them clear those blocks out, whether it's through, like I said, energy healing, past life regressions. She does a lot of inner child work, shadow work. So I think she is a really important voice in this conversation about how we really tap into our own inner knowing, learn how to trust it, and how to use that to create the life that we want. And so this was a really interesting and informative conversation for me. She is a really interesting person to talk to, and you can just really feel the years of experience and wisdom that she has that comes through as she speaks. And I hope that our conversation today can give you a few insights into what your intuition might look like, but also she offers some tidbits in here about how you can start to deepen into that yourself and start to open up that conversation with your own inner knowing, your guides, and the universe. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and let's get to it. Well, welcome, Kristina, to the Human Design Hive podcast. It's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's been a real pleasure getting to know a little bit about you. We just recently connected, but knew right away that you'd be a good fit for the podcast here because you work with people and their intuition and with spirit guides and lots of different modalities for healing. And I'm really excited to get into all of those things. And I just want to say, I really love Zoom and the whole like global community we have now because I'm here on the east coast of South Carolina. You're in the mountains of Mexico, and we're able to come together and have a conversation. Like, how beautiful. So, Well, let's just get started. We'll just get into it. Why don't you tell the listener about who you are, a little bit about your background, and kind of what's led you to your point right now? I know that's a big thing to ask, but we'll just get started there.
Okay, great. Well, I grew up in Texas and wanted to be involved in healing, and I couldn't quite get into the regular being a nurse or whatever. And then I started studying acupuncture. So I was an acupuncturist most of my life for over 35 years. And then when I moved to Mexico, I still did a little bit, but then COVID hit. And by that time, I had really done a lot of work on my intuition and my intuitiveness. And so I was actually giving readings. By the time I left, I was living in Arizona at the time. And I was giving readings. And all those years I was an acupuncturist, I would be standing over on it with a table next to me, somebody laying on the table, and I could look up and I could see their past lives many times. Or
Wow.
one time a woman came to me who was very dear, and she was talking about her husband who'd passed, and he was standing right there. I said, well, if you want to talk to him. So I have had the great goodness to be able to see beyond into certain arenas that many people don't. And I'm quite familiar with them. And I have kind of a beautiful way of doing it because I'm a Capricorn. I'm very grounded. I'm not real, I mean, I am woo woo, obviously, but I do it in a very grounded, practical way. And many of my students just love that, learning how to do all these things because I make it accessible. And
Mhm.
so these days I live in Mexico in San Miguel outside of town. I do a lot of work online, teach a lot of classes, and I have people come and see me here. And mostly I do readings. Occasionally I do some acupuncture.
So you said you've been practicing acupuncture for a long time. You
Well,
started off
I
in
was
like a
looking,
conventional medical
yeah, I was
field.
looking in that direction and it just
Oh,
didn't
okay.
seem for me. And then finally I lived in Santa Cruz, California at the time, and then a school opened in
Mm.
San Francisco. It was the second school. And so,
Mhm. And you're like, that's what I'm going to do.
hey,
That's
exactly.
awesome. I love acupuncture. I haven't had a treatment in a very long time, but probably about 10 years ago, I think I was getting acupuncture like every week. And I honestly, I don't know where I fit in my schedule now, but it is such a really great experience. So before that, when you started seeing past loved ones or past lives, like that never happened before you were practicing acupuncture?
No, actually it did, but
Hmm.
that was my private life. I was always quite intuitive, and
Okay.
I spent some years as a young woman,
Hmm.
kind of I dropped out of college and was doing some exploration. And I
Hmm.
would have times where I would see past lives with myself and someone I was with, or I would be aware of, I could see fairies occasionally, and there would be things from the other side I was aware of. But it was really during my healing practice that I developed the skill more.
Yeah. Well, I can say I'm not too surprised. I mean, I am looking at your design. I always love to know everybody's human design when I'm speaking to them. And you are, for the listener, you are a 1-3 profile, and you are also a manifester. And your incarnation cross is the incarnation cross of penetration 4. But what's important in this conversation I was just talking about is one of the key markers in your chart is your unconscious sun energy. With Are you familiar at all with that? Yeah, and that is in gate 57, gate of intuition. And you definitely have that, just it's just natural for you, obviously. And so I love right off the bat, we get right into that intuition. It's just really clear in your design. And so let's talk about how you, because we kind of got an overview. Do you still do acupuncture?
I do a little bit. Mostly I do it for friends.
Yeah.
And I will say that I had a big office called Tiger Moon
Hmm.
Wellness Clinic, and I hired some people who were very, very psychic, and they really taught me a lot of what I know now. And in fact, one of them was a full body channel, and we would
Hmm.
close down the office at a certain time. I had different treatment rooms, and they would rent different parts for me. And this woman would channel, and so
Hmm.
for gosh, a few years, we did that every week.
That's awesome. So, was it through that time in your life where you really started honing your skills, especially working? I think it's interesting. I love working or developing intuition. I myself didn't really quite understand the intuitive connections that I had because they had kind of been present my whole life and I wasn't really aware of them. And as I started talking to more people, and actually the person I mentioned that I'd had on the podcast was like, I can see what you're doing. You're doing it while you're talking to me. When you're talking about human design, you're kind of channeling information. I was like, oh, is that what that is? And a lot of people don't recognize it. So how do you work with your clients, your students, in helping them develop their intuition? Because we all have access to it, right?
Right. So the first thing is that I have people take a intuition test, which is a meditation that I've put
Mhm.
together, and it helps one discover what type of intuition you have. So there's four main types. One is through seeing, one is through hearing, one is through feeling, and the other is through knowing. So once a person has an idea of what their top way is, we focus on it.
Mm,
And I teach my students how to pause, how to be
mm,
still and listen, be present for what's showing up, and how to slow down the action.
mhm.
Everyone has intuition, but most of us are moving so fast. We have a glimmer, we have something comes up, and we just keep moving. And the trick is to go, oh, there it is. Oh, wow. And to sit and focus on it and then go, oh, got it. Thank you, Spirit. So I always have my students like say thank you, and then more
Mhm.
will come.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you because that's exactly my experience is just not paying attention, not realizing the synchronicities, the coincidences. You're just like, oh, that's of course that happened or whatever. But you can definitely see it. And I do agree we all have intuition. It is a matter of how we experience it. And I'm not sure if you're familiar in human design, it's whether you have a consistent way of accessing it or if it depends on maybe your environment. You might have access to different Claire abilities. And
Uh,
would you mind for those who are curious, you mentioned the four Claire abilities. Can you give some like touch points of how they might be experienced if somebody's feeling, or if someone might be clairaudient or
Yeah.
clairvoyant
Yeah.
or
Yeah. So if you're clairvoyant, it means you see things and you could either see it in your mind, like you have a vision of something. Or I just taught a live class. It's so great to be teaching live again. And I had a client there who is quite the dreamer. So she sees it when she dreams.
Mm.
And we had another woman in the class. I led this meditation where they met their spirit guide. And she said, well, nothing happened. And then later she said, no, wait a minute. I was in a cenote, which is the underground where there's water. And I was all in light. And then this being of light came to me. And I said, nothing happened. But she was seeing it. So
Yeah.
she saw it. So when you see things, you might see a cloud in the sky, or you might see the birds, and then that would remind you of something. So it's
Mm.
kind of visual inside you and outside you.
Mhm.
If you're clairaudient, it means you hear. And so I had a guy in a class a month or so ago, and he's quite a musician. And I turned to him and I said, I bet you hear things in music. And he said, oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So when you're clairaudient, you can hear that little voice in your head that sounds different than your own voice, or you can
Mm.
hear sounds behind sounds, or you can hear sounds and know they mean something. So
Mm.
that's clairaudience. If you're clairsentient, so it's feeling, these people, they get their best intuitional hits when they're doing something. They're much
Mm.
better off when they're walking or they're gardening or they're washing the dishes. It's the doing that relaxes them, and then they feel something.
Mm.
So they'll walk into a room and they'll feel how everybody is in the room. So and the feelers are, yeah, they have to be careful because they can feel everything. And many of the feelers will shut it down because they don't want to feel things. I had a
Mhm.
young woman who was the teenage daughter of a friend of mine. And I said, hey, when she was an athlete, I said, hey, do you know more? Do you feel more when you're running? And she said, yes. She says, when I'm running, all these hits come to me. So
Wow.
that's the feeling one. And the feelers, they don't like to sit still. They're not good at sitting still. So I have a friend and he's a gardener. If you go to visit him, you sit in a chair and he runs around in the garden and talks to you. So the
Hmm.
feelers, they like to be in movement, or they're doing. I have another friend, she's always knitting or like that. They don't
That's so interesting. I've never heard that aspect of clairsentient before. I've heard it's a feeling sensation, but I always attached it, or what you read a lot about is it's a emotional feeling of being able to tap into people's emotions in that way, or the way you're feeling in your body is like if you're an overwhelming sadness or something that comes up for no reason type of thing. I've also heard that, but I'd never heard that they are more likely to receive messages when moving and using their body. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great, yeah. They have those gut feelings. So they feel things in their belly or their
Mhm.
chest, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the claircognizant people are they're more mind oriented. And so
Mhm.
what they get is like a download into their mind. And the trick is to be able to discern when you get something that's not yours, it's really a download. But those who are tuned in will have a real sense of, oh, all of a sudden I got it. And then there it was. And
Mhm.
many people will have the claircognizant with one of the other clairs.
Mhm.
And the more you do it, the more you get all of them. And
Yeah.
some people, and there's other ways you could get it. Those are the main four, but some people will get it through smelling. They smell things and know things and like
Mhm.
that.
Well, that's the one of the things in human design with the spleen center, the splenic center has many gates, and yours is defined, so you do have consistent access to your intuition and recognizing it and how it feels and how it works with you, like once you tuned into it, and it's more reliable in you. But it's interesting because each one of the gates in the spleen is also associated with a certain type of intuition, and they are
Oh,
like the
no.
clairsentience, the claircognizance, audience, all that. And what do you find yourself now using all four clair, like you're always
Yes.
using all of them? What do you think is your strongest? Is
Oh
there?
gosh, probably. Well, the guides are always talking to me, so I'm always hearing them in my head. But I
Mhm.
think clairvoyance, I see a lot, and so I just go out for a walk in the morning. Now I have my students go out with a question, like they've chatted up their guides in the morning, or they've asked their questions, and then they go out to see what they receive in terms of signs from the animals or what they see or feel or hear. Myself, I often go out without anything, but I go just to see what the day, like what's up. And then I'll see the birds go a certain way and, oh, that means something to me. Or I see something I don't usually see. And I go, oh, so that means something. So I'm always kind of reading from what's around me.
That's beautiful. So when do you feel that, well, not do you feel that, or do you teach? Let me ask you this. Working with people to connect with their intuition and then also their spirit guides, is there like something that comes first, or can it just go hand in hand? I know you probably teach it separately, but do you feel like you have to really be deepened in your own intuition before you can start connecting with your spirit guides?
No, absolutely not.
No.
No, no, absolutely. You can learn it simultaneously.
Yeah.
And yeah, because you use your intuition to tune into your guides,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really about making a relationship with your guides. So you're chatting them up and talking with them and receiving what comes, but you use your intuition. So
Okay.
very much they can go hand in hand.
So why don't you let us know a little bit here, like what spirit guides actually are, like what roles they can play in people's lives, and I guess really how they could start connecting with their own guides.
Okay, so when we incarnate, when we come into this lifetime, we all are given one guide, and that's usually our primary guide throughout our whole lives. And then over time, we pick up other guides, and there can be other guides that are really primary through certain parts of our lives as we're learning something or working on something. And then we can also pick up guides just to do a small project or whatever. So for myself, I help people. I always identify one guide so they know one of their guides and their names, and then what that guide is there to help them with. And then once they know what that guide is there to help them with, they can really call on that guide for help in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of people, especially I would say in the more traditional cultures, will think that it's someone who's passed over, like someone who's
Mm-hmm.
died. And I had this woman in this class this weekend, and she's the great dreamer. And I've worked with her for many years. So different people in her family have died. Now, her brother died maybe about a year ago. And she said, when I asked her who was she working with, who was her guide, she said, well, I'm thinking it's my brother. And I said, well, no, it's not. I checked in and the brother said, no, I'm not her guide. I check in on her. I talk to her occasionally, but I'm not her guide. And then she goes, well, really, he was around all the time until we had that service for him. And then he was gone. I said, yeah, well, that's what I mean. And there was this other person that actually was a relative of hers that was her guide. So a little bit more amorphous. It takes more trust and more work to actually feel them there. But I encourage my students to ask for help, because the guides are there to give us guidance and to protect us and to support us and different things that we need.
Mm-hmm. So I would say your dreamer student then maybe had some mediumship abilities as well, as she was connecting, do you think, with her brother who had passed over? He wasn't actually a guide, but he was still around her.
Yes, I mean, she's very open and very intuitive. So yes, she connected with her and her grandmother, but she had a woman who had actually come to me. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, but a young woman in her 20s who had gotten a kind of cancer that was very rare at the time and died quite quickly. And that woman was heart, and she was her guide.
That woman was what?
The woman who had died was all heart, and that
Oh.
was the guide to the dreamer woman. So, yeah. So, but many times we can say, yes, it is mediumship, but many times we can sense and feel those who have passed over, and they're there to bring us messages, and they pop in and out. Now, some of them will become the guide to a person, but not always.
Interesting. So where do you usually start with your students when it comes to deepening their intuition? I know there's probably some general practices you have, but even I'm sure people are asking you all the time how they can get started. They're not necessarily working with you yet, but what are some really like your top 3 maybe things, action steps you can have for people
Okay,
to
this is great. It's a great
start
question.
tuning in?
Really good question. So first is know what kind of intuition you have. So you know how you get your messages and signs. Then you make a relationship with your guides. What I say is you chat them up. So in your morning practice or your morning walk or your morning prayers, and some people will do it, but most people do it in the morning, you talk to your guide like your friend, and you ask your guide to help you with certain things. You ask for help. So you're creating a relationship, asking for help. And then the third thing is when you go out in the world, you're looking for signs, which means this information coming to you from different ways. And that's how the guide sends the information. Now, you might feel the answer inside of yourself. You might see something and feel an answer, but you might see how some birds fly and know the answer. Or your best friend might tell you the answer. All of that is from the guides. So I'm going to add one more, the fourth thing.
Sure. Yeah, you don't have to limit yourself. That's fine.
I just want to say the fourth thing because it's important, is that once you get a sign, so sometimes we call them glimmerings. They're very amorphous. You're not sure you got it. And so what do I say? You say you got it. You say, yes, that is something. I got it. And then you give thanks. So when you give thanks, when you give appreciation, you give gratitude to your guides, then it starts the whole process and you get more and more. But it takes asking for help, looking for what comes, and then acknowledging it.
Acknowledging it. Yeah, I think is key, because what we've been doing, I think a lot of us, most of our life is really doing most of that process, but not realizing, right? And we haven't acknowledged it. So it's not something, I think, that is starting to almost like become the only word that comes to mind is concrete. Like it's getting really rooted in our consciousness that we're actually doing this, because like I said, we are all very much wired for intuition, because in human design there's our first awareness center would be the splenic awareness, which was our instinct and our intuition, which is very linked to our bodies. It's not necessarily linked to our minds. Our minds can help us connect and ask the questions and everything, but that's, I think, where we all get tripped up is it your intuition or is it just your mind chatter from things you've picked
Right.
up or what you think it should be? And do you find you have to work a lot with people with that of like kind of sussing out like those intuitive feelings and what's like mental? I don't want to say the word garbage, but it came up. Do you find that people have difficulty doing that, or is it once you start on this journey, is it get a little bit easier?
Well, I think that it takes an intention. And
Mm,
so, and some people have what I call as mental chatter, and their mental chatter is really loud. So you
mhm,
actually have to like set that aside or try to move away from the chatter and then go into more of an open place. So if your mind is always busy, the guides can't come to you in the same way.
mm,
If you're open and you're kind of expectant and you're upbeat, it comes
mhm,
to you much more easily.
mm,
So those people that have very, very strong minds, we have to really work to set it aside. And the other
mhm,
thing is that we're not taught as a culture to believe in all this or to
mm,
cultivate it.
mm,
So people have to make a choice that that's what they want and that they're going to live into it because it takes a commitment to living into it as opposed to just like, oh, maybe it's here. If you just say, oh, maybe it's there, that's where it's going to be, maybe over there. But if you
mhm,
say, yeah, okay, I know I got it. I know I can do this. And I'm just going to step by step, then it comes.
mhm. Yeah, I love that because it does your mind does get in the way when in your, configuration, your body graph, your head and ajna centers are both undefined, so just for the listener, if they're listening along with one gate activated, that gate 61 in the head, which very much is that, beginning of the knowingness channel of the individual circuitry, and it is literally where the channeling can occur because it's not logic based and it's not experiential based, it just comes. And then you're pretty much all the way open in the ajna, which is where you would conceptualize, and maybe someone who has a defined ajna, such as myself, might be a little more fixed in the way they process information. But when I look at your design and the work that you do, it's like you're definitely living your design in full expression because you are allowing uh, those that information to come through and let it kind of go where it wants to go and become what it wants to become. You're not necessarily trying to control it, if that makes sense. And I would tend to I have some of that as well in that channel of knowing, but I also have a lot of logic that gets in the way. I would be one of those people that's a little more in her head all the time. And I think that's what has and still continues to kind of make me doubt my own intuition and what I do. But I am also learning that it actually is there and trusting it and not questioning it as much because I have found that the more I work with it, because I am incorporating it in what the work that I do now, I can feel the whole time that I don't really know for sure. I don't, but the person receives what they want to receive. And I think that's really important when you're developing this is to just trust and just like you said, acknowledge it as well. So I appreciate that. Okay.
But I want to talk about one more thing before we go there.
Sure.
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to say that everybody can do this. It just takes an intention and a desire, and then it takes a little bit of focus. And it takes taking a jump. It's like a leap of faith so that you have faith that, oh yeah, okay, I'm getting it. And then
Mhm,
reassuring yourself. It's almost kind of like there's this little part in yourself that you're growing and that you have to assure it that, yeah, it's okay. I'm getting
mhm,
it. Yeah, this is working. Because in the beginning, it can be pretty shaky. It's a new territory. But
mhm,
I will tell you, almost all my students that have been with me a long time, they've really developed their intuition, their connection with their guides, their connection with their knowing, and everybody gets it really different. I always say, do not compare yourself with anyone else. So
mhm,
it's just getting your way and then trusting
mhm.
it.
So this is something you've been doing for quite some time and natural to you. Was this really how you ended up in Mexico? Was it a series of events? Was you feel like it was following those intuitive hits? Like how did you get there?
Like, no, that's not how I got. That's so funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I had I lived in Prescott, Arizona for over 10 years, and I had a house I couldn't sell, and everything that I looked at in America just felt like the same. And I had lived a number of places. So I went to an astrocartographer, a person
Oh,
who does astrology of location.
yes. Yes.
And she told me I would do really well in this big area of Mexico. And I grew up in Texas, and we had always gone to the beaches, but my mother had come to San Miguel a lot and I'd heard about it my whole life. So I just came for a visit and I knew that it was a good place for me and it just all worked out. And I've been here over 12 years and it's been a great
Oh,
place
wow.
for me. So
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a long. I mean, I love the. I have not had an astrocartography done yet. I mean, talk about really a system that has to be understood because I don't know about you. I've tried looking at it before and try to figure stuff out on my own. I'm like, no, that's definitely someone you need someone to do a chart reading with. So that's really awesome that you got there. And so do you now where you're at in Mexico, like do you have a full practice there? Are you mainly online or you said you were doing some in-person things?
I'm online a lot because I was an acupuncturist and lived in some different ways. I have a big clientele of people that know me.
Hmm.
And I taught a lot, both in Prescott and up in Wyoming. I had lived in Idaho for a long time.
Hmm.
I have people come here some, and yes, I have a nice, lovely community here. And before COVID, I did a lot of in-person teaching. Then after COVID, I've really just started teaching again. And so, yeah, it's nice. I am doing teaching and people do come for readings here, but I do a lot of my work online.
Hmm. What are some of the other healing modalities that you incorporate? You said you not so much doing acupuncture, but are there other things, energy healing, sound, any of that stuff that you're working with that you like to incorporate with this developing intuition?
Yeah, it's very different. So
Mhm.
I can see past lives. So I have people who maybe were my acupuncture clients or maybe not, who have problems that they can't get over.
Mm,
And so they come to me and want healing. And many times it's stuck in a past life. And when we do the healing on a past life, then we can get over the illness. Or sometimes it's in the family line and we work on the family line. And then I do a lot of work with the inner child. So those are the
mhm.
three areas in healing energetically that I work with. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
Is that, yeah. So
yeah.
I have a woman that I've known for a long time. She's a lovely being. And she had chronic motion sickness. And she's a very active woman who wanted to surf and do different things. And she couldn't do it because of her motion sickness. So we had a session, and there were three lives that had to be cleared. And in each one, there was like one, I remember she was being dragged by a horse. So it was that. And so that was imprinted traumatically, that kind of movement. And then one, she was in a boat that I don't know if she died in it or what happened, but there was a lot of that up and down with this big ship. And I forget what the third one was, but we
Mhm.
cleared all three of those lifetimes. And then off she went. And soon enough, I get this little email from her. Guess what? I'm surfing. And so it totally cleared her motion
Oh my
sickness.
gosh, that is so fascinating to me because I do you do it through like a hypnosis meditation type of thing when you're doing that? You just literally because I did have someone years ago doing like a past life thing, and I'm also someone that I have a lot of difficulty uh, in someone putting me into some kind of like hypnosis or even a guided meditation at times. Like I meditate and I do all that stuff, but when I'm trying to follow along with someone else, my little more active mind is like, is this the right thing I should be thinking or should I be looking at that or whatever? Very active mind. But the 2 times I think it happened, one was very like, you feel it, right? You kind of if that was her experience, did she really resonate with what you were, telling her? Is there usually, like how does someone know that you're really tapping into their past life? Do they feel it?
Yeah, usually they do. So what happens is I just like close my eyes and start looking, and then the guides will bring it to me,
Mhm.
and then da da da, and I say, "How's that feel? Does that resonate?" And they'll go, "Oh yeah, absolutely."
Mm,
So I just see it, and then sometimes even we know there's a past life, and the guides don't want to show me too much about it, but we get
mhm.
enough. So yeah, the guides show me, and then I verify with the client, and then we go back and do a healing on that person in that time.
Hmm. Do you see a lot, or not a lot? I'm just curious because this is one of my experiences. So I had two different experiences. One of them I really resonated with, where I was taken through this visualization kind of thing. And they say, look down at your feet. Have you heard that one before? And like, what are you? And I was like, wearing these boots. And I was a man. And it was so interesting because even while I was seeing it, I was also in the room here, like, is this real? Am I making this up? So that's why I wonder if it's reliable, but it felt very real because he was a very isolated person who had been like kind of misunderstood by a lot of people. And I could definitely resonate with that sensation. And then I'm curious on this part. I had another one where I felt I was with someone who was my little brother or something and having to keep him safe, kind of thing. And I didn't get any confirmation. I didn't ask, but I wondered. It felt like this brother of mine was my son currently, and we have an interesting connection. Do you find that happens a lot of times when you're looking at
A
past
lot of
lives? You can see people's connections now.
Yes, very much so. So very much so you'll find someone. So say that you're having difficulty with someone, then we go back to the lifetime and see what was happening in this other lifetime. And often, almost always, that person is in relationship in this other lifetime in a difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yes.
Maybe
very
that's why I have a hard time letting my son go. He's 25 years old. He still lives with me, but that's okay. That's more common these days than not.
Yeah.
I feel a very strong connection to him. So I'm like, I hope I'm not holding him
Yeah.
back by thinking I have to keep him safe, right? Maybe I am. I never thought about that before till just this minute. That's so funny. I'm going to have to do a past life session with you because I find that interesting, because I do think a lot of what human design is about is the deconditioning of being able to see how you're energetically wired and really how you're meant to operate, what you came into this life with the intention of either healing or expressing or helping others heal. And what I love about it, because I've been on this path for 20 some years through all different modalities of trying to get to the core of who I am and what I'm here to do, and all these different healing modalities, and human design can like give you that visual to kind of pinpoint, but also it sounds like a lot of the work that you do as well helps people shed those layers so they really can just be who they want to be. And I think that's really awesome. But I like the I don't have to schedule a past life thing with you, because that would be something fun to explore.
Honestly, I only do it in correlation with healing of some sort. I don't just do a past life because I don't think it's useful just to see. But if there's something that a person can't clear or something that they can't get beyond, then we do it. Now, I'll tell you a story about group past lives.
Okay.
So I gave a class many years ago up in Jackson, Wyoming. I have a close friend there, and I used to teach there quite a bit. And so it was one of the first classes I did. It was a big class. It was over 20 people. It was all women. And I know a lot of them. I'd been treating them online or whatever. And then they all started coming to me with complaints of the other people. And I'd never had this happen. I was like, wow, this is weird. And so then what it turns out is that they had all been together in a past life there. Some of them were on the wagon train. Some
In
were
Wyoming? They'd all been together in Wyoming? Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Yeah, it was just something. So some of them were Native Americans, some of them were landowners, some of them were on the wagon train. So we went around and everybody said, oh, well, this is how I'm feeling. This is what my part of the story is. And then we did some sort of healing, and most of them healed. And then there were 6 of them, as I recall, something. Anyway, they didn't heal. So we had to put them on the ground. Then I had a woman on each end, and we did this whole healing. But sometimes people will incarnate together in groups to clear old group dynamics.
Oh, wow. That's so not even just like those like family or other connections. These were strangers to each other, but they all had a connection through you.
Well, a lot of them knew each other in the community. It was
A little
very
bit, yeah.
community, but they weren't real close. Yeah. I had another situation where a woman who's now a personal friend of mine came to me, and she was on the board of a school, and it was just a mess. The board, how these boards can be. And I went, oh my God. And then we found this past life where they had been, I don't remember if they ran a church together or what it was, but it was all based in a past life, all these issues that were in the present life. So
That That is so interesting. And so do you advocate then? So what am I trying to say here? Making that connection between the healing and so the intuition and the development. Do people Are these the same people that are coming to you for those things, or you find that people are more interested in developing an intuition and some are more interested in healing? Is that, or do they kind of cross over?
It all crosses over eventually. Yeah. I mean, it
I
doesn't,
think
not
so.
everybody, but many, many people do. I have some private clients right now who they're in a private learning situation with me as well as regular sessions, but they're very much working on their intuition and they're working on keeping their boundaries clear because they pick up too much from too many people and then we're clearing things. So
Mhm.
doing the healing. So yes, it
Yeah.
can all go together.
That's what I see a lot in working with people is where they have openness in their design that they can, I mean, you're a manifestor. And so you are in that 9% of the population that are manifestors that are really here to initiate people, really to kind of get them into action, get the ball rolling. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. But I find that people will say they had a open or undefined emotional center. Yours is defined. They find out that all that stuff that had been they thought they were so emotional and over the top and erratic, and it probably impacted the relationships and their nervous system because they're just always on this like heightened alert for what was happening in the environment. And then when they find out that quite often that wasn't them, it was really the people around them, it like can really change people's lives. And I think when you probably do the same for people, when you can help them identify their intuitive abilities, and sometimes it may be somebody was more clairsentient or clairvoyant, that these experiences that they had that they may have not even told people about because it feels scary is actually something that's like can help them on their path to healing, right?
Yeah. Many
Yeah.
people don't, they're too open. They feel too
Yeah.
much. Empaths and highly sensitive. And so they have to learn how to have energetic boundaries and how to move people out of their fields so they can feel their own feelings and their own thoughts as opposed to the people. So yeah, there's many things to learn in order to have it. It can be overwhelming if it's just happening to you and you don't know how to work with it.
Mm, that's so beautiful. Well, it sounds like you have a lot to offer people. And so, what is something that you're really excited about right now that you're either working with your clients or your students or something you're working on? What's something that's really getting you excited right now?
Well, I am working with, there's so many people dying these days. There's a lot of
Mhm.
death on the planet. And so I am working with my clients to be in contact with people on the other side who have passed. And so I have never taught this, and I think I'm going to teach it in the new year.
Mhm.
So I would help people get the messages from their beloveds who've passed over.
Mhm.
And I think the thing I'm most excited about is people getting their guidance and finding that it's easy, that it's not so
Yeah.
difficult. And so, yeah, I have taught many, many classes online, so I have it all. And I've been doing some great work with people who buy a package and then we design their own course and they get all the
Mm.
videos they need from lots of things I've done.
Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah, it's really fun because I just feed them what they want as fast as they want it. And then we have our private session and often I lead them in meditations for healing or
Mhm.
we do specific things and so they're both growing what they need and they're healing. So that's a wonderful thing.
I love that, and that is very much a individualized approach that we certainly advocate here in the human design community because no two of us are alike. We're all individually unique, and we all have our unique way of doing things and what's right for us and at what pace. So I love that you can work with your clients in that way too. So we're going to have on the show notes here, you'll see all the different ways that you can get in touch with Kristina. And also make sure you check out that intuition test would be a good place to start. Is that correct on your website?
Yep.
Good place
Yeah,
to
we'll give
start.
you the link for that so you can take that test. That's the first place to start. And then I have a little free class after that calling 3 steps to developing or honing your intuition. So that's another
Mm.
little free class. And then After that, you can go on to bigger classes or personal work with me or whatever's best.
And you're on Instagram, or are you anywhere else, or
Mostly I'm on Facebook. I'm more of a Facebook
Facebook?
girl. Yeah. It's under my name. I'll give it to you so you can put it in the show notes, but it's under
Okay.
my personal. Yeah,
Hey, wherever you like hanging out is where you hang out. That's
that's right.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, and it was really great getting to know you. I have a lot of other questions, I'm sure, but we'll just try to keep it right here for now. And everybody that wants to know more about you can go to your website and check that out, and go check that intuition test. Sounds really interesting. So I really appreciate you being here today, Kristina. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you. So there you have it. What did you think? I found her so interesting to listen to. I think you can tell in the episode because I had questions for her. But I just love how many stories and examples she had of how everybody's intuition plays out differently and what their experiences have been. She's obviously been at this for a long time and has quite a long history of really helping people kind of break free of any limitations they had had holding themselves back in moving forward to the kind of life that they wanted. And I find people like her to be really inspirational because there she is living in a mountain town in Mexico, living her best life. And I don't know if you noticed the background if you're watching the video. I just loved her house. I had to tell her afterwards, wherever she was living just looked so I don't know what the word, just peaceful. And I could just imagine where she's living. And I just love that she has followed her own guidance to get her there. And not only that, she still continues to have such an impact on not only her local community, but all of those around her and worldwide. It's just amazing world we live in. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, that we can have these conversations in such different parts of the world, but still all be so closely connected and working together towards the same goal, which is really discovering what it is about us that we want to bring forth, what it is we want to heal, what we want to share with the world. And I just think she's such a beautiful example of someone who is dedicated her life to doing just that. And I hope to be someone that follows in those footsteps. So I really appreciate you listening to our conversation today. Don't forget that the Human Design Guidebook is now on sale. This is a fully customized PDF report that covers all the main elements of your chart: type, strategy, authority, profile, definition, your channels, your gates, your incarnation cross, all of these elements. Uh, what they are specifically in your chart, how to work with them, how to know when you're in alignment or out of alignment. It's really a comprehensive report that is packed full of really valuable information just for you. And go ahead and check the link in the show notes for that. The feedback so far of these guidebooks has been really great, and it's been a real labor of love for me to put these together and to bring them to you. And so you can check out all the details in the show notes. And as always, if you would like some help with walking through either your guidebook or your design, if you're already kind of familiar, or you have some specific issue you'd like to work with, you can certainly check out all my offerings there in the show notes and on my website, as well as the ways we can work together one-on-one, because I would love to connect with you and help you as I can. So I really appreciate you listening today. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will connect in the next episode. Bye for now. Made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.